Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Rama Rama Hare Hare. Okay, devotees, Hare Krishna. That's it for this evening. Thank you for the association. Jai Jacob. Haribol. See you tomorrow. Haribol. Hare Krishna. Haribol. Hare Krishna. Sorry? Oh, questions and answers. Yes. Oh, tell them. Yeah. Sorry. I forgot. For anyone who wants questions and answers. It's online, but you're welcome if you want to. I mean, you can ask questions too, just from the floor, but it's totally open and voluntary. Hare Krishna. Sorry, guess what? I forgot. No, there is. Well, I forgot, to be honest. It's been, pretty full day. Let me just see if the questions are there. I mean, there were some questions left over from last week. Here they are. Look, here's some questions. Wow. Oh yeah, we got some questions. Got 12 questions. Okay, devotees. Hare Krishna. Arjuna Charan Prabhu? We're online with the questions people. We're already online. Okay, thank you. Right, so devotees of the Lord, we have 12 questions. Let's have a look at these questions. 12 questions will take a bit of a while to get through, but let's go for it. Okay, first of all, some prayers. Nama Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharne Niravishesha Shunyavadi Pascha Chadesh Tarne Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripa sindubhya evacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So, okay, here's a question. And anyway, it's a fair question. Where does Brahma Sumita fit in the hierarchy of Vedic literature? I've heard some scholars, even from other Vaishnava Sampradayas, don't recognize it as authentic Vedic scripture. You know, if you scratch around in other Vaishnava Sampradayas, you'll find some people who don't accept anything. So, that's not very important. The thing is, Lord Chaitanya found this in South India. So, it was an already existing Vedic literature, Brahma Sumita. But where does it fit in? It's a little difficult to say. It's not part of the four Vedas. We mentioned this morning the section that there are parts of the four Vedas called the Samhitas, but it's not one of them, to my knowledge. It seems like it's a Smriti Shastra, some sort of Smriti Shastra connected to the Puranas, something like that. But actually, Prabhupada doesn't talk about it. Sort of definitively, what is the Brahma Samhita? I mean, where's it from? But it sounds, the Sanskrit is like what we call classical Sanskrit as opposed to Vedic Sanskrit. So it sounds like it's from the Smriti literatures. Smriti means not the four Vedas. What have I done? Right. Okay. Anyway, I may look into that. I mean, I've thought about it before, but it's accepted by our acharyas. Yeah, it's definitely, absolutely accepted. It's accepted by Lord Chaitanya, who just happens to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So I think that's good enough, basically. Yeah, Brahma Samhita, what we have is the 5th chapter. It's a much bigger book. But all that's left is the 5th chapter. Right. Wait, I just stumbled on something. Okay, well, actually, Prabhupada says it is part of the four Vedas. It's Shruti. So there you go, devotees. That's something. It's from somewhere in the Shruti section, although it means the four Vedas. So exactly which Veda it's connected to, or what the situation is with it in like precise detail. We don't have that sort of information, except Lord Chaitanya found it. So, okay, please could you explain why it says in the purport that all incarnations come from Shiradaksha Vishnu, but then at the end it says that Garbhadaksha Vishnu is the fountainhead of all the incarnations. Well, I don't know if it said exactly that, but in general there is a point there. All the incarnations, except for Lord Brahma and Lord Shiva, as guna avatars, means they are incarnations. Except for them, they come directly through Garbhadaksha Vishnu. But otherwise, all the other incarnations come via. He's like just a via medium, a doorway into this material world, Kshirodakshai Vishnu. But, to whatever degree it may say, Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the fountainhead of all the incarnations, the thing is, Kshirodakshai Vishnu comes from Garbhodakshai Vishnu. So Garbhodakshai Vishnu is the fountainhead for Kshirodakshai Vishnu, and Kshirodakshai Vishnu's dependent on Garbhodakshai Vishnu. Kshirodakshai Vishnu is dependent on Garbhodakshai Vishnu. So in that sense, you can say, you can take it back a further step and say Mahavishnu is the fountainhead. Could we please elaborate on the fact that the Bhagavat Purana, as one of the 18 Puranas, was written before Srimad-Bhagavatam? Yes. Because the thing is, all the Vedic literatures were finished before Vyasadeva compiled Srimad-Bhagavatam. And there was an 18th Purana, which was called the Bhagavat Purana. And which, was Bhagavat means it's focusing on the Supreme Lord. But it was smaller and it was not so explicit about Krishna and his position and the incarnations, their relationship to Krishna, and all these types of details, how to approach Krishna. It just wasn't up to the same standard at all as Srimad-Bhagavatam. Therefore, Narada Muni criticized, even though Vyasadeva had done a Bhagavat Purana, still Narada Muni criticized him that you haven't sufficiently glorified the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and you haven't clearly and sufficiently quantitatively, and you haven't clarified his position and the process for approaching him sufficiently. So, these are, as we know, we went through that part where Narada was chastising Vyasadeva, strongly. So, even though that Bhagavat Purana was sort of like an introduction to Krishna, you could say, but just a simple introduction, even though it existed, still Narada Muni chastised him that you just haven't done this sufficiently at all. He really heavily chastised him. So, therefore that Bhagavat Purana was scrapped, and then it was replaced with Srimad-Bhagavatam as the 18th Purana. Okay, we find Narada Muni chastising Vyasadeva for deviation from glorifying Lord Krishna and devotional service. Shouldn't he have consulted his guru prior to taking up this massive challenge of the Vedas? Well, he could have consulted him more. The thing is, he did consult, but you can't just... Narada Muni's a busy man, traveling all over the material and spiritual worlds. You can't just consult with him like every day. So some prior consultation was there, but still, despite that, Vyasadeva just didn't make things as clear as he should have, as we've said. So therefore the guru came and corrected him. And this is often what happens, or it's definitely generally what happens. The disciple is given a mission or some project to work on, and the spiritual master comes back after a while. How are you doing? That's what he did with Vyasadeva, and he had a look and said, you didn't do so well, did you? You got to redo some of this. Yeah. Yeah. Like Srila Prabhupada only spoke with his spiritual master. He said he was with him on 10 occasions, about 10 occasions. And he got some instruction, but not a lot. Really not a lot. So at the end of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's life, just days before he left this world, Prabhupada wrote to him for clarification, what would you like me to do? And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta told him to preach in English. Yes. And that's a pretty broad instruction. Like preach this, preach that, in this way, in that way. And, some detailed presentation of how to preach in English, but just preach in English. It will be good for you and for those who hear from you. When his jewel is cut off, this is Ashvatthama. When his jewel is cut off, can we say that Krishna got what he wanted by killing Ashvatthama with humiliation, etc.? So he was killed. That's the whole point. You got it. That's the whole point. It was worse than death. In the early chapters of Bhagavad Gita, that point is made that for the Kshatriyas, some sort of embarrassment, being made to look like a fool or that sort of thing, is worse than death. Yeah. So it was worse than killing him. Yeah. At least killing him would have been honorable for him in a battle. Yeah. So, yes, the answer to your question is yes. He was more than killed because of the humiliation. Because he wasn't a pure Kshatriya, but he was definitely partially a Kshatriya. That's why he fought in the battle. If he hadn't had some qualification as a Kshatriya and he tried to fight in the battle, he wouldn't have lasted 5 minutes. Yeah. Did Narada die in order for him to become Narada? Yeah, we tried to make the distinction between Narada Muni, in the end, who's the great traveling preacher, very great traveling preacher, and who he was in his previous life as the son of the maidservant. So we read how Narada, he wasn't Narada, he was the son of, we don't know what his name was in his previous birth, but we read how he died. That death came, and simultaneous with his death came realization of Krishna. The Bhagavatam verse says, just like lightning and illumination occur simultaneously. He died, and at that instant, he was already very realized, but then at that moment, full realization came, and then he became the great Narada Muni. Does that sound clear enough? How does it sound to you? Okay. Right. Ashvatthama was almost killed. He had no power already after being punished. How can he activate another Brahmastra? Well, you'll be surprised what people can do when they put their minds to it. So yeah, he got knocked back. He got knocked back. Yeah. But it wasn't that bad. He's fired the Brahmastra, and then Arjuna, what would you say, sort of cancelled it out? What's the term? Anyway, he released another Brahmastra against that Brahmastra and nullified the first one. But still there was a massive explosion. So, but then, then there was a gap, a little gap. And so Ashvatthama pulled himself together again. Narada was only 5 years old, so what kind of services did he perform for the sages? Yeah, well, that's described in different places. He would serve them prasadam and clean up after them, clean their rooms or wherever they were staying, that sort of thing. Yeah, he did things like that. And, he would sit there while they were discussing, because they were just discussing all day. They had nothing else to do. There was no television to watch. Yeah. No books to read. They just discussed from morning till night. So we would sit there and run errands. Can you bring me some water? Things like that. That sort of thing. Simple errands he would run. In India, I have seen people taking interest in hearing Bhagavatam from a reciter who does this to earn his livelihood. Okay, yes. What are the benefits for the speaker and the hearer? What benefits will the speaker and the hearer derive from this? Not much. The verses are there. The verses being recited, that's something. But, Prabhupada applied the principle of milk touched by the lips of a serpent. Have you heard of that one? Milk touched by the lips of a serpent has a poisonous effect. The milk becomes poisonous. And so if you drink, it looks like milk. Just looks like milk. And milk, of course, is very good for you. And if you think, it's some milk, let me have it. But it's got poison in it from a snake. It'll kill you. Yeah. So Prabhupada, when he talked about these professional reciters who just present things in such ways as to sort of stimulate the mundane audience, to bring things out in such ways that mundane people, materialistic people, their interest will be aroused. So that sort of presentation is not a pure transcendental presentation at all. So therefore the benefit they get is, at best, very little. I'm referring to the audience. And for the speaker himself or herself, you do get some women. You definitely get some women who are professional Bhagavat reciters. The benefit, as they're presenting, they're prone to be thinking about, my audience of mundane people. Am I stimulating them so that they'll give money? Because they don't pay an entrance fee. They just donate. And depending on how, those materialistic people felt about the recitation, on that basis they will donate more or less or whatever like that. Yeah, so the reciter will be thinking in those terms, the professional. I have to present it in such a way that these materialistic people are really going to become inspired. Because when they're inspired, they'll give more money. So therefore the benefit is not great all round, if anything. And indeed, it's basically like an offense. It's an aparad against the Bhagavatam to use it for material purposes. Why did Arjuna or Draupadi show mercy to Ashvatthama by not killing, though Krishna says in Srimad-Bhagavatam 1.7.35 to Arjuna that he should not show mercy? Yeah, I thought about this, I didn't mention it. Draupadi and Arjuna are the greatest devotees, so why were they not submissive to the Lord's will? Why didn't they just say, yes, sir, whatever you want, good night, Ashvatthama? It's a pastime of the Lord's. Srila Prabhupada, or the verse actually, one of the verses there, made the point that Krishna was testing Arjuna to see how he would react. Is he going to use his intelligence or just be a yes man and just say, well, whatever you say? So Arjuna thought. Krishna wants us to think. Similar principle, the same principle, with Shukadev, Goswami and Maharaj Parikshit right at the beginning of the 6th canto, right at the very beginning, that, at the end of the 5th canto, Shukadev, I guess, has explained the hellish planets, each type, the whole lot, I think 28 or 26 maybe, types of hellish planets. Really, it's amazing. And I've seen, I'm really not into it, and I mean I'm really not into it, but occasionally when I look on the internet, at least on a few occasions here and there, I've seen sort of, I would say, popular musicians with the youth, or people my age nowadays, and these musicians, they make songs or albums about going to hell. Yeah. Like they want to go to hell. You seen that? No? That's good. You're not from my generation. Of course, I think it's worse now. Highway to Hell. Yeah, right. Who's that? Somebody. Oh, I don't know. I don't think it's them. But anyway, I don't know. I think it may be AC/DC. Yeah. Or there's this one fellow I stumbled on, Rob Zombie. You heard of him? Good. I mean, I just completely accidentally, I don't know how I ended up there. Yeah, and he sings all these just, ghastly, I mean, it's unreal songs. And they think it's cool, and so many people think it's cool. But wait till they get there. They're gearing up to go there. And wait till they get there, I tell you what, it's going to be the rudest of rude awakenings when they see that hell is real. They're actual real places, geographical locations, where these extremely horrific things just go on, just like every day. It's normal. Madness. So I was saying though, I was telling the little story there, that Shukadev spoke to Parikshit about that. And Parikshit, right at the beginning of the 6th canto, when he, having heard that, how the people are going to suffer incalculably. It's just, we cannot comprehend. We can begin to comprehend, but not much more than begin, how they're going to suffer. So Maharaj Parikshit, as a very sensitive and compassionate devotee, he was thinking, we have to do something to help these people so they don't go to hell. Because if they do, it's just going to be too terrible, actually. Just absolutely too terrible. So what can we do? He asks Shukadev. And Shukadev says, well, I think what we can do is we can get them to do prayaschita. Prayaschita means, it's sort of the principle, you could say, of an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. Anyway, not exactly that, but if you've done something bad, do something, as good as your bad activity was bad. As good. To balance, you've got down you went, because something bad, there's level. And now you must do something good, and then it'll cancel out the bad. That's prayaschita. That's prayaschita. Shukadev suggested that, and he's the guru. And normally with the guru, you just, yes, sir. If it's night and the guru says it's day, you just say, yes, sir, or something like that. I mean, Prabhupada talked like that on a few occasions. But actually Shukadev was testing him to see if he's thinking. Because the spiritual master wants to see a number of things from the disciple. But one is the disciple thinking? Or just being a sort of, silly fool? Just, a mindless yes person. Like Prabhupada one time was on a morning walk somewhere in America in some city where the area they're walking through, it was just a suburban area with, streets full of houses, but it was an affluent area. So there were big houses and big cars and all that. And so they're walking along. And Prabhupada points to a house, some, nice, expensive house. Prabhupada says, we can engage this house in Krishna's service. And the devotee said, yes, Prabhupada. And then some car, maybe, I think a car, some sort of Cadillac or something. We can engage this car in Krishna's service. Yes, Srila Prabhupada. And then they're walking, and a dog came running out and barked at them. And Prabhupada said, we can engage this dog in Krishna's service. Yes, Prabhupada. And Prabhupada said, no, we will not engage this dog in Krishna's service. So he's trying to get the people to think. And Krishna, of course, knew that there are different options here. There are different options. This fellow, Ashvatthama, has actually killed 5 children, the children of the Pandavas, their own children. But there are different things that can be done to punish or to correct or whatever it might be. And of course, one thing that can be done is to just execute such a person. Yes. But another thing, you could do something which is worse than executing him. Like even, it's one thing to just hang a person that normally they're dead in 30 seconds or something along those lines. It's just very quick. Or, anyway, it doesn't take a long time, supposedly. But then you can torture the person to the edge of death and just stop. So that, they're just in a shocking state, but they're still alive. And then you let them recover a little for a while, and then you do it again. Because you get, the fact is, you get these people, I don't know about now, I suppose now too, but definitely in the past, they're professional torturers. They're professional. And they know how far they can torture a person before, the body just switches off and the person dies. So they know how far they can push a person, and that's worse than just, shooting him and the person's dead kind of on the spot. And for someone like Ashvatthama, Krishna knew, of course he knew, that if you humiliate him, then that will be worse than death. Krishna talks to Arjuna about this, isn't it? That for the Kshatriyas, how does he put it? Just bear with me, I just want to check on this. What does Krishna actually say about how sort of embarrassment or something for a Kshatriya is worse than death? Yeah, here it is. Bhagavad Gita chapter 2 verse 34. Krishna is speaking to Arjuna, telling him you should fight. And Krishna says, people will always speak of your infamy, meaning, if you're a coward. For a Kshatriya, warrior, to be called a coward, that's too extreme. So, people will always speak of your infamy. And for a respectable person, dishonor is worse than death. So that was the point with Ashvatthama. To dishonor him, like in a really radical way, was worse than killing him. He would suffer more. So this option was there, And Lord Krishna wanted Arjuna and Draupadi, but particularly Arjuna, to think, what is really going to be a suitable punishment for this wretched being? Okay. Okay, here's the last question. Well, Sub Chopra from Yamuna Nagar, Haryana. Yeah, that's nice. You can work with us. Ishvari Creeper, are you there? Anyway, I'll keep your name Shub, and we'll connect up with you and start and work some things out. So here's the last question. Is it all right to have more attachment to the spiritual master than Krishna? It is. But you should have attachment for both. Yeah, you should definitely have attachment for both. Of course, the spiritual master will generally be, you could say, more objectively real. If you want to put it that way, than Krishna. Krishna is this distant authority figure. You can't speak to him. And if you do try to speak to him, he won't reply. He may reply too. But the spiritual master, generally speaking, you can converse and just have an actual relationship, an ongoing relationship, which helps you greatly in your Krishna consciousness. So therefore, it can happen, and it happens sometimes, that some devotees develop more attachment for the spiritual master than Krishna. But we should also try to appreciate Krishna. Krishna is a person, he can be appreciated. He can be appreciated. He's a very amazing person. And when we read, I'm reading, I'm preparing for the Bhakti Vaibhava study. I'm in the second canto now. And you can see Prabhupada's attitude towards Krishna. It's amazing. Wow. Incredibly respectful. It's amazingly respectful and caring and just really interested. What will please Krishna? So we definitely, this is the Krishna consciousness movement. It is the Krishna consciousness movement. So we definitely need to work on developing consciousness of Krishna in positive ways. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Anyone else got any questions? From Facebook? Let me just check here if there are any from Facebook. Yeah?
Just on the point where you were explaining how they are professional torturers.
Yeah.
Surely they will be punished as well, or they'll get karma for being such persons?
That's a good question. If someone is a professional torturer, won't they get karma for their, horrible things they're doing? Well, yes. But there's a consideration also, is that if they're doing it, if they're employees, like of the government, and the government, they're actually doing what the government wants them to do, then the government will get most of the suffering of the reactions. the head of state in the 6th canto, it says the head of state, be it a king, president, prime minister, dictator, or, whatever you call them, they get 1/6 of all the karma of the citizens. And how much karma is that going to be? Wow. It's just too fantastic. And therefore, these people who want to become the president or prime minister, they don't know what they're doing to themselves. They just don't know what they're doing. Yeah. But even knowing that, someone like Maharaj Yudhisthira, Maharaj Parikshit, they still became the heads of state because they were able to run the state and run the citizens so that everything was according to the proper standards. So therefore they would get tremendous benefit from having all these, getting a share of the good karma of millions of these citizens are just the most incredibly wonderful people. They'll get 1/6 of it. Whew, that's great. But nowadays, our Cyril, Sri Cyril, they just don't know what they're doing. I mean, they really, in so many ways, they don't know what they're doing. But the professional torturer, if he goes, or she, maybe you could have a she too, why not? If they go beyond the actual call of duty, then they'll take reaction. And you would expect that it'd be very difficult for them to avoid getting some pretty heavy reactions. Is that okay? Well, here's a question from Rasaraj. It is difficult to understand how Vyasadeva was in the bodily concept of life. Kindly explain. He wasn't. He is an incarnation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So, they're never in the bodily conception of life. So, when he walked past those girls who were bathing naked, they assumed he was, because he was dressed as a householder. And, because he's a householder, he's a parent, and he's carrying out those duties, those types of duties. Therefore, he was, like in a responsible type of household consciousness, but still he's a transcendental personality. So they saw that, he's a grihasta. It's not exactly that they saw he's in Maya and he's going to look at us naked young women and think, that's, how nice, something like that. It's an interesting situation. Okay, I think that's all, unless there's anyone else. But I don't see anything else. So, okay, Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.